Okay. Right, thank you for coming. This is my first big talk, so I was a bit nervous, but you all look like lovely people, so we're going to get along fine. My talk today is about how to change the world, so I'm not, aiming broad or anything, but we're going to get to some good specific stuff. I think the best way to start is probably to consider people who are out there to change the world, namely superheroes. They do a lot of good, they try their best, so I thought it might be nice to see how they do it. So let's take a look at Superman. I'll just give you a second to read this little cartoon. I think it has a good message. Have you finished reading? Is that enough time? Awesome. Okay. So basically what we see here is that maybe Superman didn't completely think through his career choices. He went out there and definitely helped people, but I don't know why he really chose the one-on-one approach with street-level crime. His talents were definitely suited to something a bit bigger scale, and he could definitely have affected more people. So let's now take a look at Batman. Now in this case, we're looking at a lot of money here. So Forbes apparently rated Batman's estate as over $30 billion back in 2007. Maybe the financial crash hit them hard, but they're still probably doing well. So I'd say with that much money, there's a lot of potential. However, what he seems to mainly spend his money on is nice toys which help him to fight street-level crime. Again, not sure why he's really aiming for that kind of direct approach with the resources he has. I don't know, if I was him, I would probably be thinking about infrastructure or just some sort of systemic change that he could help along. And the other thing is, obviously he cares a lot. He does really cares, tries his very, very best. But his main focus seems to be Gotham, just Gotham, which is great, but it's only one city, and he's a multi-billionaire. So I would be a little bit less parochial with that money if it was me. And I mean, judging by this picture, there is also the question of how much good Batman does for Gotham when he himself ends up inflicting damage on the infrastructure of the city in the various battles that he brings to the place. So anyway, not to, superheroes are great, but I thought that was sort of revealing that maybe we could do better than that. So next thing we'll talk about is a bit about me. This is my origin story. As a child, we can see if you can pick me out here. Any guesses? That one is me. There we are. And here's another one, actually. There we go. And just have a look. And I am there. Yeah. So as a child, I was described as being quite thoughtful and sensitive. And I definitely cared a lot about things. I would cry quite easily about things. I kind of still do that. So you don't grow out with that. But the main thing I remember is that I was pretty idealistic. I was told I could do anything I want, and I knew what I wanted to do was change the world. So I was pretty set on that, and just thought, why not? Now we go on to student life. I actually studied music. So I did very dry classical music at Cambridge University. And you can see on the left here is me conducting a concert, and on the right is me submitting my dissertation. So those 2 points are probably the highlights of my musical career, academic and performance-wise. What you can't really see from those photos is the weeks and weeks of stress that went in before each of those events. So anyway, that was really great too. And graduation rolled around. Here are my proud parents with me. They're here today as well. Shout out to my parents, hello. That was great, but what next? I hadn't really thought that much about adulthood while I was at university. I was very busy. There were lots of concerts to conduct. And perhaps my idealism had a little bit, maybe a bit naive about what life is really like. Because even though I do consider myself extremely lucky, I've got a lovely fiance and a very cute dog, and one of them is here today. Shout out to Francis over there. It is still hard, right? I think we can all say that, especially when you're just starting out and got no real idea how to find a job and pay the bills, things get a bit overwhelming. And at the point when it's difficult to even find the energy and time to keep the house clean and keep the laundry going and all that, it starts to become seemingly a bit ridiculous to think about changing the world. Because just how is it even possible when I can't even manage my own basic needs? So that was where I was at. But luckily, I came across a movement called effective altruism. So here we go. This is how I think we can really change the world, is with this thing. Because the thing is that although the non-profit sector is this amazing and wonderful space with such great energy and work, the way that charities usually get set up and then get chosen for donations is a little bit ad hoc. You know, either you've got a particular emotional experience and connection with that cause, or you got persuaded by a random charity mugger in the street. You know, they caught you on a particularly good day or bad day, and then you find yourself giving £10 a month to just really anything. So the thing with effective altruism is it's not just altruism, because that's doing good, and that's always obviously a good thing, but effective altruism is trying to do the most good that you can. And that is literally the definition of it. That's all there is. But if anyone here does Agile or anything like that, you can have a simple idea, and it can still be pretty hard to pull off. So there are a lot of other ideas that come from this that effective altruists have been thinking about for a while, about 10 years, to try and figure out how to do this. So let's just go through a little bit how effective altruists select and choose their charities, trying not to only use the emotions that we all feel for wanting to help. So, first of all, this idea of the most, doing the most good, suggests something quantifiable based on a bit of evidence, you know. And this is the decision framework that seems to be, I haven't thought of a better one, like it's what most effective altruists agree on. So, first of all, you're looking for something with a big scale. It affects loads of people. It's a problem that makes lives a lot worse. It's really important. But then, that's not quite enough, because global warming is like that. That's a huge problem, but the thing is, it's not neglected, really. Lots of people know about that now, which is great, and loads and loads of people are trying to do something about it, which is also great. But if you're really trying to find somewhere where you can make the most difference, you might want to look for something that hasn't been thought about that much, because your difference is going to make a bigger impact. And then finally, you want to find something which could potentially be solved. There are some incredibly tricky problems out there, and we might be best off focusing on ones which we've currently got evidence for that we've got a solution. So that's why global health and things are so useful, because if you've got a medicine that works with your, for your disease, then you know all you have to do is get out there and apply it, and it will work. So that's what we're talking about with tractability. So that leads to some main areas that effective altruists tend to focus on. First of all, we've got global poverty, which is pretty standard, really. Then we've also got animals, especially factory farm animals. There are billions of them out there, more than humans, and some of them are living in pretty terrible conditions. Plus, of course, your average animal charity is going to be looking at pets, usually, and really it's a very neglected area in factory farming to try and improve those conditions. Then finally, we've got, this obviously is AI. In this room, I don't think it'll be too difficult an idea to imagine that inventing something which is smarter than ourselves could carry risks, and that is, along with other things, we try and think about the future risks that could accidentally wipe out humanity and see what we could do to prevent that. Now, obviously, that's a bit weird, but that's kind of a side effect of going for something which is neglected by most people. You just end up being a bit weird. So that's slightly a cost of effective altruism or a benefit, if you like that kind of thing. So the next part of the definition is the word good. And that's a tricky one, obviously. Philosophy comes in here. This guy's called Peter Singer. He is the founding father of effective altruism, really, because he took his moral philosophy, and his argument basically is that a child who needs you, who you can see right in front of you and who you know, is worth just as much, or I mean, is worth no more than a child you don't know who's suffering far, far away. So I think people can basically grasp that. That's a good idea. And this guy was sort of the first, I guess, serious academic to say, I've been philosophizing about this for ages, and now I'm going to actually do something about it and act. So that links with this idea of circle of compassion, which is purely the sense that in human history, we've gradually been getting wider in our circle of compassion. We started with basically our family and our tribe, and that was the way for thousands of years. And then just in the last few hundred years, we've started widening that to cover whole cities and whole countries. And especially with the internet nowadays, we truly are thinking globally about who we can empathize with and find compassion for. We can even find compassion for the non-human things like animals and the environment nowadays. And when I'm feeling a bit depressed about the world, I like to think about that because I think humans have come a long way if we're able to actually consider that everyone else is also important. Okay, so then we get to the bit which says you can, do the most good you can. And that's important too because it's all about your unique position. Everyone's going to be different and have different amount of resources, especially time and money. But I would like to just take a little side note here to look at where our position actually is. Because I know I felt like I wasn't very resource rich. I didn't have that much money. I was working as a part-time administrator, and I got about £10,000 a year for that, which on this graph, which shows sort of average income and the whole population of the world, that puts me, because it's in dollars, I come about here, which is a bit higher than I thought it would be. I'm like 90%, I'm richer than 90% of the world's people, even though in this country I wasn't doing particularly well. So I just thought, when I first saw that, I was like, oh, maybe I do have the resources to do something. And I know this is it's a bit depressing, right? It's so unfair that the world is like this, that it can get a bit like, oh, you know, that's really bad. But actually, I like to look at it in terms of my individual position here, and to discover that I am closer to like the 1% than the 99% really, puts us in a place of power and ability to do stuff to help people. So just trying to put it in that light, really, of it being exciting rather than depressing. It really is exciting to have this opportunity that could make such a difference. So anyway, the final part is actually to do something, which all of the rest of it is so much, talking if we don't actually do something. This charity here, Giving What We Can, is one of the effective altruist group of charities, and they try and encourage people to pledge 10% of their income to the most effective causes they can find. And after seeing that graph, I decided to do it. And I'm very happy to say I just got to 1 year of doing this. And so there it is. I've finished my pledge for the last year, and I made it to the 10% mark. And here is the charities I gave to. The one here called Against Malaria Foundation is probably, it's rated very highly, maybe the top charity in the world at the moment. And they reckon that they can save a life for $3,340 I don't know exactly how they came up to this figure. Obviously, it's statistics, so and it's also difficult to know when you've actually prevented something from happening. But basically, they reckon, given that a bed net is less than $5, a good deal less than $5, after you've spent that much money on getting bed nets out there, then one of those bed nets will have covered somebody and prevented them from getting the bite from a mosquito that would have killed them. So that was probably a kid under 5 years old, and you have literally just saved a life for this much money. And this is probably one of the cheapest ways of saving a life in the world today. So it's just nice to know that people have crunched the numbers on this, and it's a bit more concrete, really, than you generally find in your charity descriptions. So that's what I like about it, anyway. So that is your whistle-stop tour of effective altruism. But we aren't just here to talk about how to change the world. The title of the talk was actually How to Change the World with Your Career, and it did also promise to say why I chose tech in particular. So we're going to dive into that now. Here we go. Here's another one. This is a charity called 80,000 Hours, and it's called that because that is approximately the number of hours you have available to you in a full lifetime career. So just like with, money, we're fairly rich in general, relatively. Time, though, is also a really precious resource, obviously. So here we go. This is how effective altruists try and think about how to spend their time in their working life. There are basically these 4 ways to go about making a difference. The first one is direct work. This is what you think about. Mainly, if you think about an altruistic career, you're thinking, okay, I'll just go out there and get stuck in. And unfortunately, this is also essentially the extent of most career advice out there. If you go up as a bright young thing, as a graduate, and say, I really, really want to make a difference, then your average career advisor is going to be like, okay, here's the non-profit sector, go for it. Which isn't really fully thought through, I think, because it's not like it's a bad thing to do, but it's probably not going to give you as many skills as you would have gotten from looking elsewhere for the very start of your career. And once you've started in the non-profit sector, it can be quite difficult to transition out of that and into a new career. It's generally accepted to be much easier to go the other way around, from like the for-profit into the non-profit later on. And unfortunately, there just aren't as many resources to help train you when in charities they are famously strapped for cash. So that's not the only way, basically. Another way would be advocacy. So if you think about it, if you persuade just one person to change their mind about something important, you have just doubled your impact. So imagine doing that if you change a law or a policy about something that's crucial and affects lots of people. You've just changed thousands of people's lives. Your impact is probably not ever going to be properly measured, but it's big. So that's kind of what I'm doing right now. And it's certainly something to look into for politics or campaigning if you're kind of suited to that career. Then we've got research. This is crucial, really, because in the beginning, when we saw the triangle kind of important, neglected, and tractable, if your problem doesn't have a solution yet, research is your only way to go. And if you're the one who can research something and find a solution, then you're going to help just everybody. But unfortunately, it can get a bit neglected because perhaps it's a problem that affects everyone, but only a little bit. So nobody's got a single burning need to get this problem sorted out, and the resources are probably not going to go there. So to have people who are aware of that and aware of where the most urgent research is required is a really powerful thing to do. And finally, there is earning to give, which is perhaps the simplest way. Basically, give away some of your money. These people are kind of some of my role models. We've got Julia and Jeff, and they are just ordinary people, and they don't make their lives any worse. They live well, and they still find a lot of money to give away as well. Julia writes this amazing blog where she's completely transparent about how they do this, and I've put a link at the end. And Jeff here is actually a software engineer. So it just feels very nice to know there are people out there already doing it, and makes it feel a bit less weird as well, because it's not exactly typical. So that's your 4 kind of options, but then these are more like strategies for deciding how to go about this. So a job can have a lot of impact if you have role impact. So if you're in a job which is powerful, and what you do for a minute of your time affects a lot more than a minute of everyone else's time, then you're obviously in a position to make a lot of difference. But we can't all be the head person at the UN, and especially when you're starting a career, that isn't very helpful. To aim for that kind of thing, great, that's ambitious, but if I ever reach a position of authority, it'll be in a good 20 years or so, and that doesn't really help me right now. So really, what's more useful is to think about career capital, which is all the things which make you a valuable worker in the world, such as your connections and your credentials, and especially your skills, and make sure that is strong and flexible, and will see you through in different places throughout your career. So at this point, I could see the point of going into tech, because I thought, yeah, there's no denying, knowing how to program is definitely going to be a pretty crucial skill. But I was still not that drawn to it. I'm sorry, Dad, my dad is actually already a computer programmer, and I grew up with this my whole life, and I just thought it was a bit boring and a bit not for me. And that was my main impression of it, even though I hadn't really thought about it. So I wasn't convinced. I thought maybe, but But the next thing was, I read a bit of the research that 80,000 Hours have done about job satisfaction. And this is the 6 factors they found make a job satisfying from a big meta-study they've done. So the thing is that then I couldn't really deny that going into tech would definitely fit the bill here. We've got engaging work that's interesting and challenging. We've got really lovely cultures in some of these companies that are just full of supportive people. And there's all sorts of things going on. It's really exciting. So I thought, actually, this could probably grow on me. And finally, there's personal fit, which is very important, and probably what you already think about when you're thinking about a career. What would I be good at? But the thing is, you don't have to have a burning passion for the thing that we want to go into to begin with. I mean, hopefully, it'll grow naturally. But the advice to just follow your passion is probably just the most annoying piece of fluffy advice that gets given to anybody thinking about jobs and things. It just doesn't go far enough. I mean, I studied music, and I know what I'm talking about. I love music, and I have a lot of friends who are in the music industry, and it is hard. And in fact, for me, I think going into it would have been worse for my passion for music. I prefer having it as a hobby. The other thing is that I thought, actually, I could be good at programming. All this studying harmony and analysis and stuff like that I'd done on fugues and old scores turns out to be just the sort of thing for logic and pattern recognition that comes in handy when you're looking at some code. So I thought, all right, this is something that fits me, so fair enough. So tech it was, but I was a music graduate, so I was like, okay, how am I going to do this? So I put together a master plan. Not really, I just sort of tried my best. So I'll bring you up to speed. A year ago, I started to learn to code by going on Code Academy, doing a bit of Ruby. Then I thought, okay, I'll actually go meet real people, which was scary, but I looked on meetup.com, And I found a particularly one was called Ladies of Code, and I just love that one. Shout out to Ladies of Code, it's a great one. And also, again, thank you to my dad, who then spent the following autumn teaching me Java very slowly, page by page from a textbook. So that came in really handy. And by the time it got to January, I felt pretty ready to go for this Get Into Tech bootcamp, which I've also got friends from now who are sitting in the audience. And that was wonderful. That was a really big opportunity from Sky, who runs that. I couldn't believe I'd found a bootcamp where I didn't have to go to London and I didn't have to pay thousands of pounds. And then finally, I'm very happy to say that I am now just in my 3rd week at Sky as an associate software developer on their grad scheme. So I've made it, which is really, really good. Thanks. So, you know, that was a year of hard work and really thinking quite short term, just like, how do I get a job? How do I get into this industry? And now I'm finally able to lift my head off of it and think where I'm actually going with this. So my plan at the moment is to basically kick ass and learn as much as I can, become really good at this job. The second thing is to continue earning to give. And now that I'm in an industry with a higher salary, I'm going to be able to probably save about 1 life a year just through that. And then in the long term, I'd like to get into a bit of direct work with research, maybe, like data science is such a huge thing, or even just direct work purely with tech. There are so many things that can be done. For instance, just designing a good website for a good charity will go really far in helping their impact. And things like apps in the developing world where smartphones can reach where nobody else really can is such a huge potential there. So we're getting to the end. Last one, here we go. I'd like to put in a cheeky plug here for the Effective Altruism Leads group, which is being resurrected by me on the last Saturday of this month, the 29th of July. We're going to just go monthly, have a couple of hours once a month to talk about ideas, just have a nice community. And it's in the top floor of John Lewis. And they don't really advertise it, but it's just, there's a community room behind the knitting. So it's very nice. And yeah, it'd be lovely to see some of you there if you're interested in any of these ideas. And then finally, here are some links. I was supposed to print these out on little pieces of paper. That was what my plan was, so I could give them to you. But it's particularly just this one where it says this presentation and this short link here. That'll take you to this presentation, and then you can click all the links. So if you only copy down one, I'll go for that one. So last word from me is just that, having found the Effective Altruism community 4 years ago, it's just such a great community as well. There's like so many amazingly smart and generous and empathic individuals who really think hard about stuff and bring a lot of rationality to the table, which is cool. And belonging to it feels like I'm definitely part of something that matters, and it gives me this sense that I've got hope for the future, and I know that whatever happens, with their help, I'm going to find a career where I will be able to change the world. So thank you very much.